I just wanted to make some commentary on Trump. You know how Trump thought he was going to solve the Ukrainian war. He was going to end the Ukrainian war within a week of taking office. That's such an absurd proclamation. I'll tell you why. Because Putin wants Ukraine. So if you're able to accept the reality that Putin wants Ukraine, why would he give it up based on anything that Trump said? He wants to reestablish the Soviet Union. That's his goal. That's why he's there. So many people that I agree with on many different issues, who I really respect greatly, they're going under the notion that it was just, well, he was just trying to send a message to NATO to get off the borders, or you know, I had to invade because of NATO. NATO didn't force you to invade. And let's say that what is true. He would have already been out of there. The message taken. You know, it's been 3.5 years. He's still there. So it goes much. It has nothing to do with NATO. I mean, that's just people that I really respect have been saying that, and it's just very. Another one of the narratives that they've been saying is because of there are Nazis there. As if Russia doesn't have Nazis. So they'll talk about this Azov battalion, and that Ukraine is just infested with Nazis, but then their president's Jewish. Again, it doesn't make any sense. So many people don't know this. Before the war, 1/3, actually over 1/3 of the population in Ukraine was Jewish. And you're telling me there is a huge Nazi issue? We're talking about a country that beneath it is the Black Sea, and beneath that is the Middle East. It's very diverse there. There's Asian, there's Arab. It's sort of a melting pot. So and 1/3 of them, more than 1/3, Jewish. So again, that's just another absurd notion.
A war that they both cited numerous times here today. The Georgia war was begun by the American sock puppet, Saakashvili. He launched that war and killed Russian peacekeepers in his initial assault. And they lied about that, led by John McCain during the campaign at the time in 2008. But even the New York Times later admitted that, yeah, it was true, that was how that war started. And it was and part of his motivation to do that was that Bush, a few months before, had given him sort of a pseudo membership action plan for joining NATO. But you can't join NATO if you don't have settled borders. And Georgia had these two breakaway provinces under Russian protection. And so he was trying to reincorporate them so he would have a settled border so he could join America's military alliance, which completely blew up in his face and got a bunch of people killed. But that's just not the same thing as Putin wakes up every day scheming on how he can conquer Poland, and only America's threat of ultimate H-bomb annihilation is holding him at bay. It's just really not like that. It's much more complicated than that. And, again, back to your original question, it's not to say that he's justified in what he's done, but it's like if you get in a bar fight and you're shoving a guy with a knife in his pocket and he stabs you, that doesn't justify you shoving him, doesn't justify him stabbing you, but also you were shoving a guy with a knife in his pocket, and don't pretend like he just woke up this morning looking to pick a fight with you. And one more thing here, a great example, and then I'll leave it, is the status quo in Crimea held from 1991 all the way through 2014. What changed was that, and there was a controversy over it. It's an extremely important Russian naval base there at Sevastopol and the rest of this. It was in controversy since independence, but the status quo held until the Barack Obama government overthrew the government of Ukraine for the second time in 10 years. And then the new regime immediately threatened to repeal and abolish the Kharkiv Pact, the agreement by which Russia was allowed to stay at Sevastopol. And it was only then that they seized the Crimean Peninsula. So it's not to say that, it was perfectly justified for them to do so, but it is to say that it was Barack Obama and Joe Biden who picked that fight, and then it was Putin who finished it. And then this is a big part of the reason why the war in the East broke out immediately, was because when the dissenters seized buildings in the East, and including with some Russian help, just like the Westerners helped the Maidan, they declared war against them. They overreacted at John Brennan's behest. We know this, it was reported in Forbes. John Brennan went there on April 12th. They launched the war on the 14th. And the reason that they did that was because the coup had already blown up in their face in the loss of Crimea.
All right.
So they weren't about to tolerate this kind of dissent in the East. It's
Anna?
not Russian propaganda. I'm a Texan. I don't even read Russian or know what the Russians say about this stuff.
Oh,
this
sure,
is the history of the world as
I
it took
speak
place.
Russian. That's
And
my.
that's
yes.
fine. Listen,
can I please interject with that?
Well, let me just say right here. Anytime anyone contradicts the party line on this, that's all anyone ever says is that this is Russian propaganda. But that's just a bunch
Because
of crap.
it is.
They're plagiarizing me.
You repeated it in
and
English.
I'm just speaking the truth.
Are you getting money or not? I'm just
give
wondering,
me a break,
you know.
lady.
At least they pay
See,
you.
that really is all you have, because you can't contradict any of my facts. So you have to come up with this nonsense.
I can contradict everything you said. I
The reality is,
participated in Maidan.
no one in America cares about Russia
second?
at all, lady. Nobody in America cares about Russia. Back in the days of communism, there were
Pierce,
communists that did.
Can I please have a word? This person spoke quite a bit. We gave him a rooper to repeat Russian talking points and lies, blatant lies. So, you know,
okay, well, Scott, let Anna just respond to what you were saying, Scott. I'm interested to hear her response.
A lot of bullshit was said, so it's kind of difficult to counter everything. Basically, it was not a coup. It was a revolution that millions of people participated in. The reason we participated, me included, I was 19 back in the day, it was because we had severe problems with corruption and a tyrannical puppet of Russia, Yanukovych, who refused to make a treaty with the European Union, which is what most of the people in Ukraine wanted, 60-something%, and especially younger people wanted to move away from Russian control, from Russians owning every single business industry in my country, and to have some sort of like laws and order, and also have some sort of democracy and liberty that is what something people have in the West, and that's something that we did not have. So that was about, a revolution was about that, about students going and protesting and getting beaten up, and Yanukovych then going to Russia to essentially ask Putin, his buddy, how can he stop the protesters, which he then made dictator laws that prohibited people to effectively protest at all in this country. So we didn't appreciate that, and we went. Literally millions of people participated in Maidan. That is not a coup. That is not something you buy for Obama or Nuland cookies. I'm sorry to say, never received a single cookie yet. It's been a long time. And yeah, all of that, when going to Georgia is a whole other thing, but that's just what Russia does. It creates unrest. It supports militias in the countries, and then it basically floods them with weapons, and it also applies its own soldiers to annex territory by the guise of protecting Russian speakers or any of that. Scott is a master, I believe Scott is the name, right? Here, but I am a Russian speaker from Eastern Ukraine. It's about as east as it gets in Kharkiv, and I didn't require their protection. I was never prosecuted. What they did is that they attacked us under the guise of protecting Russian speakers that was never prosecuted in this country, because half of us literally are Russian speakers. We have been Russified back in the day by Russian Empire. So yeah, this war is not about you. I'm sad to say some things are not about America. This war is about our very long time, centuries-long oppressor trying to thrust us back under their control. And we didn't want that. People in Georgia don't want that, if you can see it by now, currently, by the revolution and the protests going on in the country, exactly for the same reason, because their corrupt Russian puppet government refused the people's will to be part of Europe. So it was never about NATO, because we never discussed joining NATO until Russian invasion. It was never even a conversation in Ukraine about joining NATO. So thanks for the lies, obviously. Also, yeah, they do have borders with NATO right now, and they had them before. Now it's even bigger. It doubled because Finland, in fear of Russia, joined NATO. That's why people join NATO, because they want protection from Russian aggression.
Okay, thank you, Anna. Rob, you've been waiting patiently. It's interesting. I mean,